Hello. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy every other Friday. Oh, I'm so excited to be here for this Pisces new moon live stream that we will be getting into very shortly. But before I do that, I do want to take just a couple minutes to talk about the program that I have starting tomorrow on February 4th. I had to double check my days. Yes, tomorrow is Saturday, February 4th. And it is a 3-part journey on the gene keys. So the Gene Keys chart is available to everyone for free. You can pull your chart for free. The link to do that I put in the description box. And then I also put a link to the program information for anybody who wants to check it out. You don't actually have to attend the sessions. If you want to sign up for the program and not attend, I'll send you the recordings. The recordings will only be available to people who are signed up in the program. All of that being said, the 3 parts are the activation sequence, the Venus sequence, and the Pearl sequence. So those are the 3 separate sequences that are a part of everybody's Gene Keys chart. And so tomorrow in the first part, we're going to cover the activation sequence. So we will start with looking at the 4 spheres that are a part of that. And I want to take just a few minutes to introduce the gene keys and kind of the concept and the angle of the program itself, because you can pull your gene keys chart and look at it for free and watch YouTube videos for free. So why would you pay to come and hang out with me and unpack your gene keys chart as a part of this group? And so before I jump into like what is gene keys and all of that, I do want to pay tribute real quick to Richard Rudd and the amazing work that he did to found the gene keys, to go through the process of even coming up with this work and then making most of it available for free. Beautiful, beautiful job by Richard Rudd, the creator of the gene keys. So the purpose of the gene keys boils back down into the purpose of a lot of these kinds of tools like human design, your natal chart, like all of it really circles around this idea of individuation. So the purpose of our journey as a human, I believe, is to individuate, is to find our authenticity. Can you guess that that's what I think the point is? That my channel is called Owning Authenticity? Yeah, I think it's pretty important. Individuation refers to a process whereby the many different aspects of your life, your dreams, your relationships, your health, your finances, your spirituality, are brought together into an integrated harmony. So, like for each of the sessions, we're going to look at the spheres, which are the little bubbles on the chart, and then also the pathways, which are the lines that connect two spheres together. So, each of the spheres and each of the pathways has a different story of like, what does that mean in your life? Like, what is this particular piece of the chart trying to tell you? And so that's really what we will be doing together in the 3 sessions. We'll use what Richard calls the art of contemplation. So because everybody's chart is unique to them, we'll have the ability through some Q&A baked into each session to answer questions about your unique gene keys, like the specific numbers that are on your chart. 90 minutes of each session, though, will be devoted to understanding the context of the chart. So, like the life's work bubble, for example, is the very top one, the sphere at the top of the chart, your life's work. The life's work sphere and the pathway of challenge, which connects your life's work with your evolution, those pieces are the same for everybody. And so we can spend time contemplating the spheres, the pathways, and the 6 lines of each of the spheres on the chart. Those pieces where kind of no matter what your chart is, everybody is going to be able to learn from the first 90 minutes, and the last 30 minutes will be open for Q&A for whoever's present to be able to ask the questions that are burning inside their minds. I cannot wait to see what comes up during that part. The 3 sequences combined are what Richard calls the golden path. And he says the golden path is a path into deep mystery. It asks you to contemplate some profound and sometimes painful questions. Like, what is your purpose in your life? And how fulfilling are your relationships? How integrated are you into your community? I love, 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 and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. I love this whole Gene Keys conversation as a part of Aquarius season, which is going on right now, and Pisces season, which is coming next. As far as really contemplating some pretty big areas of our life, like what is our purpose and why are we here? Those are hard things to figure out. And so, having a tool like the Gene Keys chart is one such way that we can have some support in trying to figure out. So, the Golden Path describes the organic flow of life when it follows natural rhythms without resistance. Another way to say it shows how your unique energy is wired and kind of paints a picture of like what can you expect? Like what's unique to you. So the golden path means the activation sequence, the Venus sequence, and the prosperity sequence. So those are what the three parts of the program are going to cover. We'll begin tomorrow with the activation sequence, which includes your life's work, your evolution, your radiance, and your purpose. So, if that is interesting to you, please check out the link in the description box below. Fola also put it in the chat. Thank you so much, Fola. Um, check that out because that's where I'm going to start today with the Pisces new moon live stream, which, just for posterity's sake here, is on. It's like overnight in February 19th and 20th, depending on where you are on the planet. For me in Central Time here in Kansas, it's happening at 1:05 a.m. on February 20th. So like February 19th in the overnight. And it's happening at 1 degree, 21 minutes of Pisces. And the new moon is always when the moon and the sun are at the same exact point in the sky. So they're exactly conjunct at 1 degree, 21 minutes. Um, so I love this Gene Keys conversation to kind of like tie into what we're going to talk about here. Because essentially what Richard Rudd says Gene Keys boils into is looking at ourselves and looking at ourselves in our wholeness, which includes our shadow, which can include some pretty painful pieces to have to face. But he throws out there his theory is that every shadow contains a gift. Every shadow contains a gift. So, like inside of every hard thing, there is a blessing. Inside of every block that we ever face is a gift, that there's something to that. And I love that perspective, like weaving its way into what I want to talk about with Pisces, which there are two core tenets of Pisces that I want to focus on today. And I say that knowing that Pisces is one of the most multifaceted signs, and they all have so many different elements that we could talk about. So by no means am I saying that these are the only two. And before I get into them, if you like my live stream, please give it a thumbs up. That just helps other people join us here in this space. Thank you so much. Um, so the two core pieces of Pisces that we're going to focus on, one is unconditional love, and the other is divine timing. And so, unconditional love, meaning loving the unlovable, is essentially what unconditional love is. We start using our unconditional love muscles at the end of what's lovable, what the things that we can just easily naturally love. When we run out of the ability to naturally love, that's when we start practicing unconditional love. So, being able to find love in the face of unlovable things, that's Pisces territory. Um, and then the other piece that we're going to focus on is divine timing, meaning like nothing is ever off schedule. Nothing. Can you go there? I sometimes I can go there and sometimes I can't go there. It just depends. I'm human. So, like what percentage of the time would you say you could go there of like nothing is off schedule? Everything is right on time. Everything is happening in divine timing. The unfolding of the interconnectedness of the all is always happening. So when we think about things like, you know, I hear stories, people share their stories with me, and it's incredibly interesting to get to hear some of the patterns that start emerging. And one of them is about like how long something's taking, or like mad that it didn't happen sooner, or just even frustrated that it didn't happen sooner. Like, why couldn't it have happened sooner? And, like, I know I resonate with that, as, like, I hate to be late is one example that's, like, very simple, um, of, like, I just really don't like when I'm late. Like, this morning, I started my live stream 1 minute late. Oh my gosh, heaven forbid. No, no, in divine timing, I started my live stream 1 minute late. That was what was supposed to happen. Do you know how I know that? Because it did. Do you know how you know what should be happening? It's happening. Like that acceptance of divine timing is that's next level. That's next level Pisces. That's like high frequency Pisces, where you get into transcendent territory. And we're talking about transcending. Ooh, this is yummy. I've never thought it this way before, but this is exactly what it is. Transcending our complaint over reality, transcending our issue with the way reality is compared to how it should be, in our opinion. Like divine timing says nothing's ever wrong. Nothing's ever wrong. And how many people do you know in the world telling that story? Probably not very many. I mean, I try to tell it. Sometimes I'll bet you do too. But again, we're human, and it can be so easy to get sucked back into the earth realm, into the details of what is going on here. And is it the right thing that's happening, or is it the wrong thing that's happening? And to make a judgment about which is, and where we should put ourselves in the middle of all of that. And the thing is, that's not wrong. The thing is, like, you know, when we start talking about divine timing and transcendence, it can even be tempting to want to beat up on ourselves when we're not, buying into divine timing. And it's like, you know what? Your disbelief in divine timing is divinely timed. It's like right on time that you don't buy any of this. Like, that's exactly how it's supposed to be. That's what's going to guide you to the right place at the right time, is that you don't buy it. Like, even that is on time. It's all on time. All of it. How does that feel? Like, I think depending on where you are is how it's gonna feel, right? Like, moving along the emotional scale is always gonna be relative, um, and I think it gets harder to say. It gets harder to know that this is all right in the right now moment, the more it hurts. The more right now hurts. The more we're suffering, the more we're not liking what it is. And when we don't like what it is, it's really difficult to say, yep, this is right on time. I feel like shit. Great. This is exactly how it's supposed to be. Like, that's usually not our first instinct. Um, and so to kind of like understand that a little bit, like maybe we can't pivot right out of it right away, but like I do want to take a second and like clarify why that is so possible and normal. Um, so like yes, of course, we want to aim towards the high frequency of any of the signs that we're dealing with. So we're talking about Pisces. So we're going to talk about and like paint a picture of like what is the highest frequency of Pisces. But there are all of these other options. There are all of these other frequencies that of Pisces that exist. And the thing is, again, I'm going to hit you over the head with this one probably, because it just is so true. And I'm like practicing it for myself too, I think, as I like continue to circle around this point. But like, even when you're in the shadow of Pisces, or you're in the shadow of Virgo, and you're not able to reach that highest frequency of Pisces, even that state of being in the shadow space is right on time, is divinely timed. Like, I spent probably about 15 years from the time I was in seventh grade until I was about 27 years old in depression, like chronic depression. Like, as I understand it, like biological depression should last like a few months, and I was depressed for like 15 years straight, like pretty much straight. Um, and while I was in the middle of that, I don't think I ever could have gone to this place of like right on time, like, yep, I want to off myself again. This is right on time. Like, no. I could not have made that leap. It hurt too bad where I was to be able to accept that this is right. In the moment, I could not accept it. And I think if anything that made it like last longer a little bit, but it was all right on time. Like those 15 years that I spent there made me who I am sitting here right now today, and I love this girl more than I can put into words. And the reason for that is because of those 15 years of hating myself that I went through, that it almost cost me my life multiple times, but it didn't, right? Like it all is the way it's meant to be. Here's a piece that, as far as like practical advice that I can give you to like help you ground into this space of like everything right on time, no mistake. Um, is a piece from Byron Katie. And I put a lot of links you'll see in the description box of this live stream because I think there are lots of different ways that you can kind of like chip away at this unconditional love is again what we're talking about. Like unconditional love and divine timing kind of go hand in hand, where like if you if you love things, it's easier to accept them. If you accept them, it's easier to love them. Like, and if one of those is out of whack, like if you're hating what's happening or hating yourself, or if you're like trying to fix what's broken, like there's just something that's out of whack that like you can't love it, you don't accept it, and now we're suffering. Um, so in Byron Katie's work, she talks about a lot of things, and she has the work which is kind of circling around this idea of like, is it true? But I'm gonna like jump to a different piece that she gives you that fits perfectly in Pisces territory, where she says anytime she loses anything, so like she loses a suitcase or shows up at her destination and her suitcase isn't there, lost the suitcase. Anytime she loses anything, she gets really excited and she's grateful because "Oh, I've been spared. I've been spared." And what she means by that is I've been spared from something worse. Like if that suitcase had shown up, it would have like led me on a path that would have been worse than if the suitcase doesn't show up and I go on this path instead. This is the kinder path. Getting my suitcase would have been the harder path. So I lost the suitcase and I got to go on the easy path. How often do you look at things like that in terms of like, oh, I lost that and that's a good thing? Because as I tried to like come up with examples, I would invite you to do the same thing. It was like super fascinating. Um, as you try to come up with examples of things that you've lost that spared you. Ooh, I just got another good one. This wasn't even one of the ones I thought of earlier, but I think I am going to tell this story. So, big sigh. Um, so my college boyfriend, uh, I I thought I wanted to marry him. I thought I wanted to like have his babies. I thought I wanted to move to the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and live on the farm that his family has been farming for generations, miles outside of any kind of civilization. And I want to live out there with him. I wanted this, like with everything I was. And with everything I was miserable because he would not propose to me. He would not commit. And it, oh God, like at the time, it was the source of of my depression, right? Like a 15-year depression. Obviously, there were lots of sources along the way, but this, him not promising to be with me forever, him not making me this guarantee, like it just made me sick to think that like he's going to leave me and just I need him to promise to be with me. And I'm like painting a picture here. And eventually I got so fed up with like waiting, even though it like wasn't even that long. That's like my impatience, but again, I was spared. Like that impatience and me not being willing to wait for him to decide that he was ready for this. So funny. Um, I got fed up and I broke up with him. And that was it. Like, this was the person that I thought, like, I wanted to marry them. I thought, like, and in my frustration, in my impatience, I left him behind. And because of that, I was free to, like, choose something else, and, like, up until that point, I was planning to, like, go live there in the middle of nowhere and, like, find work somewhere right there, and there's nothing, like, there's nothing. So I have no idea what I would have been doing had I, like, had that all worked out, like, had I gotten what I thought I wanted, like, my life would be wildly different. I guarantee we would not be having this conversation right now. I can't imagine how painful that path would have been. The isolation and the box that that was, as far as, like, what I did instead was go to grad school and then move to Dallas, Texas, which is, like, the complete opposite thing as far as, like, moving to the middle of nowhere or moving straight into the, like, uptown Dallas, like, living in the city. Like, that was the route I took instead, and turns out that's exactly where I was supposed to be, and, like, I was spared. Him refusing to propose, he spared me from a life of, like, the version where I married him, the version where maybe I got pregnant and, like, now what? Like, I still don't have kids. Like, my life is wildly different than what that was, what I thought I wanted, what I was so severely depressed, I was suicidal over wanting this and not having it, and now I feel like he spared me. He spared me with, like, refusing to choose me. I was spared. So many thoughts coming into my mind right now, so many examples of, like, the same thing. The guy that I dated in Dallas refused to introduce me to his family. Refused. In, like, 2 years of dating, he refused to. You can tell I'm, like, still upset about this, but I was spared. I was spared because of that, like, the whole thing was, like, he was of a different culture, of a different race, and, like, his family was like, "You gotta marry within our culture, within our race," like, and so his whole thing was, like, a blue-eyed white girl is, like, not allowed, not allowed, and that was me, not allowed, and again, like, this tore me up. I was miserable over this, and looking back now, I was spared. Because if I had been allowed, he and I probably would have gotten married, and that was one of the most tumultuous relationships I've ever been in. Incredible for spiritual growth, awful for establishing a sense of continuous inner peace. It was like growth cycle, growth cycle, growth cycle, growth cycle for 2 years, and yeah, it had its life, while it happened, and then it came to an end, and the amount of peace that I've been able to come to since then, I'm sure is in large part thanks to that relationship, but also thanks to it ending. Like, that's another piece of divine timing, is the divine timing of the end. Like, how do you know it was supposed to end? It did. How do you know that that was, like, supposed to be the right time of the end of that person's life? It was. Divine timing. I mean, it sounds almost cold, but it's not. It's accepting. It's allowing what is to be whatever it is. And that's where you get into, like, the Pisces and the Virgo. Pisces is, like, total love of what is. Love of what is. No matter what. No matter what is, we love it. Again, how many people in your world do you know who live like this? Like, so if you're thinking like, I don't even know where to begin, that's probably normal. Like, it's probably normal to think like, wow, this sounds hard. Like, I think this is honestly like the whole reason we are here right now is because we are figuring out how to live it so that we can model it for others. So, like, if you're thinking, I don't have very many role models in my life who can help me practice unconditional love, unconditional acceptance of what is, maybe that's because you're the one that's supposed to practice it and supposed to live it and help other people live it. I don't know. This is just, how I've kind of come to myself. Again, how do you know it's supposed to be like that? How do you know you weren't supposed to have somebody model this for you? Because they didn't. Because they didn't. You wanted the satisfaction of getting there on your own, of, like, finding your own unique path to it, of being able to tell these stories, because I could go on and on and on of things that I've lost that spared me. Oh my gosh, like one of the most humbling experiences of my life that, like, again, in the moment I was sick. I was sick, like almost threw up physically. I was so emotionally sick over what had happened. But, like, okay, so long story short, my freshman year of college, I was on a team that went to a national parliamentary procedure competition. So, a parliamentary procedure competition is 6 people per team, and you have a president, a secretary, and 4 debaters. And the president, like, opens up the meeting, and then you use parliamentary procedure to raise motions, to have discussion, to make decisions. Like, basically, it's Robert's Rules of Order, the thick Robert's Rules of Order. You have to read that book, you know it backwards and forwards, and then you demonstrate. It's called your demo. You demonstrate that you know it by doing it correctly. And there's a point system of, like, you raised your motion, you did your extra motion, you took the vote correctly, you did this, like, you, like, did all the pieces, and then there's points awarded to each part. And so part of, like, it's like 1,000 points or whatever for the demo, and a big chunk of that. So each of the 4 debaters has their assigned motion that they have to do. And then in addition to your assigned motion, you do one more. So everybody has 2. Your additional motion is like a little chunk of points, but your required motion is 100 points of your score. So like 400 out of the 600 points is, did they do the required motion on their card? And I was like, I was the only college freshman. Everybody else on the team were like high school seniors or juniors. And this sounds like justification. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to like dig back into that. But like, I felt like I had a lot of pressure on my shoulders to like be a leader in this sense. At least that was like what I was perceiving from the coach of the team and who I was at the time and still pretty much am, where like if there's a leadership vacuum of any kind, I'll take it and I'll like put it on my shoulders. Like, this is mine. I'll make sure this happens. And like, don't worry, I'll take care of it kind of thing. Like, almost like cocky, like, yeah, I can do this, like just flying a little too close to the sun. And so, anyways, I'm all up in my head, like, did they do their required motion? Did they do their required motion? Do I need to like raise a point of order to like remind one of them that they need to do their shit? And I'm like keeping an eye on everything. And we get to the end of our demo, the thing's like 10 minutes long. And we get to the end of our demo and you come and you stand like right at the front of the stage and the judges are right there. There's 2,000 people in the audience, mind you. I forgot to mention that. So I come and I stand at the front of the stage and like there's just spotlights and it's hot and you're like sweating and there's just all these people and the judges right here and you can see pretty much only them. And I start to do my process where I get ready for questions because they're going to start with the chair and then they're going to work their way through the debaters. And so I start to get ready for my questions. And the main question that they ask you is about your required motion. And so you figure out like, okay, what was my required motion? And then like, what could they ask me? Like, let me get in that headspace. And I start thinking like, what was my required motion? And I almost passed out when I realized I hadn't done it. I hadn't done it. I was so busy keeping track of everybody else. Like, did you do? 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 No, no, I didn't. Minus 100 points. That was in the final round. We had like, there was like the first round and then the second like the semifinals and then the finals. And there's like the top 4, you're working for like the top spot in the nation, the top 4 teams. And we took 4th place by about 100 points. That like we had a shot at second or third, I forget which one, but like we took the 4th spot, which at that point felt like last place, not 4th, which is a whole other thing. But that was because of me. That was because of me. And like we walked off stage and I was so mad at myself. I don't know that I've ever been that mad at myself because at that point, it wasn't just letting myself down. It was like everybody else on the team, their fate was intertwined with mine. Like we're one team. I don't get my own score. We all have a joint score. And I just blew that for us. And one of them, a sweet, sweet guy named Matt, he was like, it's okay. And he's like trying to give me a pat on the back and like whatever. And I was just like, oh, get off of me. Like I had to go in private and just lose it and scream and cry because I was so mad at myself. How could you be so stupid? So mad at myself. But I have thought about that experience 4 trillion times since then. And every single time, it's like a time release capsule of humility that got implanted inside of me that says, I know you think you know, but just direct it back to you. I know you think you know the right answer, but just pay attention to yourself. That's all you got to do. I know you think you know how to help them, but just pay attention to yourself. That's all you got to do. And every single time, it's another dose of humility. It's another dose of like knocking me down a peg all over again. And I think like I was spared. I was spared from the ego of I led that team to a victory, which was where we were headed. If we had taken first place, oh my God, my ego would have been insufferable. Like I would have been a whole different person in this life. Like if this had not happened, I would have been an entirely different person because that would have reinforced everything I had been doing as far as like just try harder, just control more, just like really get a sense of all the details and hang on to them with the life, like with a death or life grip, like just try harder. And in how hard I was trying, I didn't even do my part. I was so concerned that they wouldn't do their part that I didn't even show up to do my part. And in doing that, I cost the team I was trying to support. So like I was spared. I was spared from a life where life taught me that that was the right way to be. Life showed up for me that day and taught me you can't be this way. It doesn't work. I was spared. Having that moment of hating myself for making that mistake, I was spared. Divine timing. How do I know it was supposed to happen that way? Because it did. Delicious. Delicious is all I can say. Along these lines, I want to read you. It's called, you may have heard of this before, and if you have, that's amazing. I'm going to read it to you anyway and let it be a reminder. And even more, if you want to practice like making your own muscle memory with this, every time I read the word maybe in this story, say it out loud with me. Maybe. Okay? The parable of the Taoist farmer. There was once a farmer in ancient China who owned a horse. You are so lucky, his neighbors told him, to have a horse to pull the cart for you. Maybe, the farmer replied. One day, he didn't latch the gate properly, and the horse ran away. Oh no, that is terrible news, his neighbors cried. Such bad luck. Maybe, the farmer replied. A few days later, the horse returned, bringing with it 6 wild horses. How fantastic! You are so lucky, his neighbors told him. Maybe, the farmer replied. The following week, the farmer's son was breaking in one of the wild horses when it threw him to the ground, breaking his leg. Oh no, the neighbors cried. Such bad luck all over again. Maybe, the farmer replied. The next day, soldiers came and took away all the young men to fight in the army. The farmer's son was left behind. You are so lucky, the neighbors cried. Maybe, the farmer replied. When we interpret a situation as an opportunity or a disaster, it shapes the way that we respond. But the Taoist farmer shows that we can never truly know a situation is going to turn out. There are no intrinsic opportunities or threats. There is only what happens and how we choose to respond. In which case, doesn't it make sense to look for the opportunities in every situation? Are you facing a crisis at the moment? How might you turn it into an opportunity? Maybe, maybe it's the best thing that ever happened to you. maybe you just got spared from something a million times worse. There is no good, there is no bad. There's only what is. And this is where, again, we go back to pivoting into unconditional love. There is only what is, and whether you can find love for it or you can't. And neither one of those is good and bad. It's just divine timing. So if you look at something awful and you're able to find love, you're able to say, maybe, then that's in divine timing. And that's where you're meant to be. And that's just where the path has led you in this moment. If you're in a moment and you can't find the opportunity, then that's where you are. I mean, I spent a decade hating myself for for that experience before I started to soften in general towards myself. And in that overall softening, this experience was one of the pieces where, like, anytime you wander into like a self-help space and they ask questions like, what do you most regret in your life? This experience is like one of the top things that comes up. And ooh, oh my God, that felt like amazing relief. Let me just pause and soak that up right now. You were spared. You were spared. You were spared. Oh my God, that's amazing. Another one of my deepest regrets that I've never been able to budge was in high school. I was my high school boyfriend. We had been together for about 3 years when I cheated on him, the one and only time I have ever been unfaithful in a relationship. And I did it, like, while we were together, completely behind his back with somebody that he was friends with, and it only happened one time, and then, like, literally one time because it felt so awful, and then I lived with it for, like, a year of us, like, still being together, but I didn't tell him during that year, and it ate away at me. I just felt like I got worse and worse and worse and worse on the inside, like, more and more sick in my depression. And then I finally told him and he broke up with me. And I have, like, not so much that, like, I wish he and I would, like, still have been together, but, like, I wish that I wouldn't have hurt him like that. Like, it's same as, like, it was my team. It was like the pain of costing them second place or like whatever it was. Like, I hated that I hurt him that way. And I'm just, like, overall, like, washed in relief in this moment because not only was I spared, he was spared. We were both spared in that situation, how hard it was, how painful it was, the year of living with that secret, like, and how disgusting it made me feel, and then telling him and how heartbroken he was and how heartbreaking that was to me. I was spared from something worse, as was he. And I've never been able to find that before. That feels so good. I've carried that secret of, like, I cheated on my high school boyfriend. I've hardly told that to anybody in my entire life, and I just announced it on a live stream because that's the level of transcendence, that's the level of peace and love that I just found for 16-year-old Carly and the choices that she made. She did her best at the time, and she did not like the outcome. She made choices that she was not a fan of, even as much as, like, as it was happening, she's like, "This is wrong. This is not good. This is bad. This was not the right thing to do." And I woke up to it, like, immediately, but then I had to live with it of, like, I did that. I made that choice. I broke his trust. I just was sick over how did I do this? And I spent a year like trying to like secretly make it up to him. Like if I could like be the best girlfriend ever. This is like such high school mentality, but like if I could just be the best girlfriend ever, then I could like repay him without him ever having to know that like I owed him this debt or something. Like I don't know what I was doing. But it eventually came clear that, like, I gotta get this off my conscience. Like, I have to confess. I have to tell this truth. I cannot live with this falseness between us anymore. And so I told him, and it basically ended the relationship. And again, I was devastated, but in the end, like now looking back, I mean, here we are now. I'm what, like 34 and a half, and this was when I was 17. So 17 years later, I'm like finally finding peace with this mistake, with this regret. And I think, oh, that's what I put as the name of this live stream is catching glimpses of limitless meaning and the divine timing of happy accidents. I'm not saying it was an accident that I had sex with his friend. Okay, that was a deliberate choice. I made that choice very, very on purpose, and there was no accident to it. And I believe that was exactly what was supposed to happen because it ended that relationship with him. It ended the person that I cheated with, like, that person had a girlfriend and, like, they broke up, like, it ended both of those relationships, and again, I've carried that on my shoulders as far as, like, the guilt of being the one who did that. We were all spared. We were all spared, and that's not to say, like, go out and, like, cheat on your people and, like, do awful things, but, like, forgive yourself for those regrettable unfoldings that they're in the past, they happened. How do we know they were supposed to happen? They did. And how do you make peace with it? Maybe you see it as you spared yourself or you spared the people involved. Um, that's not easy, obviously. Like, I've been working with this idea of you've been spared for months now, and only just this morning came to that one about the Parla demo, like, really got to to, like, let that one go, and now here letting this one go. Oh, there's one more as far as, like, when I think of my deepest regrets in this life. We've already cleared 2 of them. Let's just bring up the 3rd one and see if this one will budge too, because this one I also yep, there it is. Mm. This is so good. Oh gosh. My other regret was when I was like 18, I think, 18 or 19. I worked at this vet clinic, and the woman that I worked with, she would have been like my boss, kind of. She wasn't really anybody else's boss. She just happened to be like the adult who was always there. My friend, the owners who owned the business were hardly ever there. And so, anyways, she kind of de facto became like the authority figure, the responsible one, whatever. I always was, like, friends with older people, just always have been, and so as, like, an 18, 19-year-old, and she's, like, probably 40, 45-ish, maybe 45 or 50, but, like, I felt like she and I were friends, like, we talked and we had conversations, and I really, really liked her. I respected her a lot, I really cared about her, and there was a day where I don't remember the context of it now. I only remember the part that's burned in my brain was the look on her face after I said what I said. But like one of those moments where you blurt something out without thinking, and it's basically like putting your foot in your mouth and then those words can never be unspoken. And basically like the gist of what happened, she was showing me her senior picture. I remember that. And she was like a twig. She was like stick skinny in the picture. And currently, like standing beside me in this moment, she was not a stick figure at all. And that's not to say that it's wrong to be that way, but in my 18, 19-year-old self, I blurted out something to the effect of, like, "I cannot believe that you used to look like this." Like, basically implying how big of a difference it was between where she is now and what was in this picture. And the look on her face was she was humiliated, she was heartbroken. It was like somebody had taken her worst fear and spoken it directly to her face. All the color drained out of her face. She shut down the conversation immediately, and we really didn't have conversations after that. Like, I hurt her feelings big time, and I it just blurted out of my mouth. Like, in no way, shape, or form. Like, cheating on the boyfriend thing, like, that was premeditated. That was on purpose. This was an accident. This like, forgetting to do my required motion, that was an accident. That was a true mistake, an honest mistake of, like, I see something and I say something, and it it hurt her, and the hurt that she felt, like, I'm empathic enough to, like, get all of that back in that instant, and this has been one of my deepest regrets, and so, like, again, though, hmm, I think it's like a time release capsule of its own kind, like, also giving me um, some humility that says, like, you don't have to blurt out every single thing you think, you know? Like, I understand that you think it and you're allowed to think it, but, like, you don't have to say all of that out loud. And a lifelong teacher, that regret has been a lifelong teacher so far around the weight our words carry and how easily and quickly they can tear a person's spirit in half like a piece of paper, and it's just done, and then they're just torn in half. And she put herself back together and actually, like, established a really healthy lifestyle for herself, and she looks, like, almost just like she did back in her picture, but, like, not near that skinny. But, like, she dropped, like, probably 70 pounds after that in the couple years after that experience, and, like, I would never take credit for her making that change, but I do wonder if part of what motivated her to make the change for herself was that moment because it hurt her bad. And it honestly leads me to wanting to talk about pain a little bit. And actually, that's exactly what I had planned. Just like the last one, I have so many more notes than I would ever be able to get through. But the part, yeah. So when we talk about unconditional love, it's like loving the unlovable things. One of the most unlovable things that humans come across is pain. So how to love pain is kind of what we're talking about, or like one of the things that we're talking about when it comes to unconditional love. And I would say part of it, I don't know that I could teach anybody how to love pain. I could try to explain how I've come to have a relationship with pain. I think I'm working towards loving it. This whole you've been spared idea helps a lot on that front. Um, but I definitely don't push against pain like I used to. And I think there can be part of us that has kind of a sneaky expectation that, like, when we feel pain, something has gone wrong. When we're in pain or when it hurts, something is wrong. And, you know, life has gone wrong. It's off the rails. Things are not working out anymore because this hurts. And I mean, I would mostly invite you to contemplate your own relationship with it, but for the sake of, getting that process started and giving you something to react to, like my spiritual path, like every profound shift of growth that I've ever been able to like have bubble up and then integrate into like an even greater sense of love and peace within me has come through pain. Every single one. Like, pain seems to be, how do I wanna say that? Like, part of the process, kind of like normal. I'm trying to find other words, but, like, that's basically summing it up, that, like, what if it's normal? Is it true that we shouldn't feel pain? Is it true that, when somebody's heart gets broken, that that's wrong and, like, the world has, fallen apart in that moment? Like, do you think it would ever be the right thing in divine timing that someone's heart got broken? I don't know. That's like a question for everybody out there. Yes, and Fuller says contraction happens before expansion. Exactly. Exactly. Like somebody asked me yesterday, and I love this question. I'm not even close to done sitting with it, but she asked me, how did you become self-aware? And more specifically, how did you learn that when you're in pain to look back at yourself rather than to look outside of yourself and try to find what in the outer world needs to be different so the pain will stop. Because I definitely have. I mean, that was the whole strategy of cheating on my boyfriend, was like, I'm miserable and this must be how I'm going to feel better, is I'll have sex with this guy. Let me tell you, like, that was good guess, Carly, but no, that didn't work. And so that's how I found out. That's how I found out that, like, it hurt. And so I knew that, like, trying to fix it in the outside world, it led to even more pain than what I had before. And so with enough of those, like, I'd love to tell you that, like, okay, so 16, 17-year-old Carly, she, like, had that experience and figured it out. Like, she got it. Like, when she's in pain, the answer is inside of her. And no, she needed several more years of examples before it all finally clicked that, like, when we're suffering, there is something inside of us that is ready to shift, that is ready to crack open and off, and a new, larger, truer version of who we were born to be will emerge. And the greater the suffering, the closer you are to that cracking open point. Like, the biggest breakthroughs I've ever had have come through kind of like after the storm clouds roll away, like after the thunder and the lightning and the tornadoes and the of like just agony. And then the clouds part and the sun shines again. And now, in that more open space, after that emotional release that the pain facilitated, I can see myself more clearly. It's like all of that pain, all of those tears, they wash your eyes so you can see yourself more clearly. And I have manifested some things in my life that make me cry and cry and cry and cry and cry. And in the middle of them, especially, prior to spiritual awakening time, like, every time I sat inside one of those moments, I felt like, this is wrong. I'm broken. Something's wrong with me. This is why my life is fucked up. This is why it's not working. This is why I'm so miserable, is because there's something wrong with me. And that was my natural conclusion, was like, I'm in so much pain. Something must be wrong with me. And I meant it as far as like, I'm not normal compared to everybody else. But the truth is, like, when we're in pain, something is wrong. But it's not wrong out in the world, it's wrong inside. It's wrong inside of us. And when we try to fix it out into the world and then it doesn't work, the pain gets a little bit more. And then we try to fix it out into the world and it doesn't work, and the pain gets a little bit more. And when the pain is enough, we can't take it anymore. When your pain tolerance is exhausted, that's when the cracking open happens. And so the people, honestly, the people who say like they've been in suffering for a long time, I'm here to tell you, I think that means your pain tolerance is ridiculously high. I think that means that actually you have an incredible tolerance for pain, that you almost like leave yourself there for a long time. And I'm very much talking about how my experience was. And, I think the people who, um, mm, that's really interesting, because I think it is a mix of like a high pain tolerance and a low pain tolerance. And I think, yes, I do have a pain tolerance, but now I think after I have my spiritual awakening and like more tools in my toolkit, like, even when I'm in pain, very rarely am I suffering over it. And I think that was what used to happen, was like, when I'm in pain, I'm suffering because there's something wrong with me. And now when I'm in pain, I understand that this is guiding me to show me, like, where is the healing still taking place inside of me? What choices might I need to be reevaluating? What options might be even better or more conducive to, who I am and who I want to be in this life. Like, when I'm in pain, it lets me know that my guidance system is working. And it's like the game that we played when we were kids of like hotter, 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 colder, colder, colder. When we're in pain, it's like our body telling us, like, that's not the right way. That's not the right way. And a lot of us, this goes back to Martha Beck's book, The Way of Integrity. A lot of us will try the culture's directions for a long time. We'll try the right way or like what we should be doing um, for a long time. And what we should be doing is like achieving in the material world. That's essentially what culture would have you do to like live the American dream. You're going to need a house and a car and a job and some kids, and you need some stuff in the physical world. And it's like, again, that's one of the ways that I woke up was like trying to chase a better relationship. In my case, I was like deeply unhappy with my relationship at the time. I was so jealous. I was so lonely inside of this relationship because he wouldn't give me what I thought I wanted. And in him not giving me what I thought I wanted, I came to a breaking point that liberated me kind of forever. Like life was not the same after that. And the reason that it was so profound was because I was in so much pain, but it spared me. I was spared. That pain that had me in a ball, on the floor, in a puddle, crying on my living room floor about how awful this was, how heartbroken I was by the situation I was in, that pain changed my life for the better. I was spared. That pain was better than if I had not had that pain. Like, basically what happened was in that relationship, this is the same one where he wouldn't introduce me to his family. Then, like, at work, he had it was him and another guy, like, on his team, and then they hired a 3rd person, and it was a girl, and she was cute, and my world just, like, came crashing down. I was so jealous. I'd never even met her. Just from the very first time he told me, like, "Yeah, she starts on Monday." He said "she," and I just got hot. I was sick with jealousy from that moment on. And this moment that I'm describing where I'm in the puddle on my living room floor is like 3 months later. So, like, her coming into our lives, her coming in to, like, sit right next to him at work, and he's got a trainer, and they're over there laughing and joking and whatever, and I'm just sweating and disgusting, like, just wanna throw up. I'm so freaking mad about it. And that was the event that spared me, that I went to the therapist because for, like, the 4th, 5th time in my life, like, I didn't wanna live anymore. I was in so much pain, I didn't want this life, and I went to the therapist, and she handed me the deservability treatment. And that was the day I began building on purpose my sense of self-worth, my sense of knowing that I am good and that my life is good and that I deserve good things. I deserve love. Like, I didn't have any of that, and that was where, like, the pit of despair came from. But I think about, like, I never would have been sitting in front of her. I never would have received the deservability treatment, another thing that completely changed my life. I've referred so many different people to it and heard that it helped change their lives. Like, I never would have been sitting there if it hadn't been for that girl who joined his team, who caused me all of that suffering. She didn't cause me the suffering. I caused myself the suffering, but she was definitely a catalyst. She was definitely a part of it. She played a part in my healing journey big time and in your healing journey because she brought me to the therapist that, helped me open my eyes and see that I don't need him to love me. I need me to love me. Like, it's not about him, it's about me. I don't love me. I want him to love me so that it'll make up for the fact that I hate me. Like, I didn't know that until she helped me see. And the only reason I was sitting with her was because I was so in pain. And so our relationship with pain and transcendence and divine timing and unconditional love. These are deep topics. Obviously, I've been rambling for 60 minutes almost and feel like we've barely scratched the surface, but hopefully, some of these stories from very personal stories from my own personal life help give some context to like what specifically I'm talking about with like living in the high frequency of Pisces of unconditional love, it does not mean that you're just like flowers and rainbows and ponies all the time. Like, it could mean that you're in agonizing pain and having to find love within it. It's not easy. It's not light and airy fairy. It's incredibly challenging work, depending on where you're coming from. Like, I'm seeing a Pisces South Node person in my head right now. I'm like, she gets it. She's pretty good at that whole high frequency Pisces thing. It's kind of just how she's wired. Me as a Pisces North Node, on the other hand, I'm like, anybody who's resonating as like, this sounds hard, that I yes. Yes, it is. And that's okay, right? Like that's another sneaky expectation that sometimes we can have creep up on us that says life should be easier than this. Like the fact that it's this hard means that it's going wrong or I'm not on the right path. Like I heard, oh my gosh, this is so good. I heard Elizabeth Gilbert say in an interview that I watched the other day, she's like, living your dream, like, she wanted to be a writer and like live off her creativity eventually or whatever. But like, she's like, living your dream doesn't mean that you're not still going to have to eat a shit sandwich every once in a while. It's like when you're living your dream, it's like the shit sandwiches that come with that are worth eating because of what you're getting to do. And I'm like, that makes so much sense. She talks about a guy who, like, he was a writer at like a prestigious magazine, and she was kind of like at a different magazine, but in her mind, like kind of not as senior or whatever. And she's like having lunch with him, and he talks about how like this problem or whatever, basically showing her like his half-eaten shit sandwich, and he's like, it's just not worth it. I just can't do this anymore. And she's like, I can I have that? I'll finish that. Like, I'll eat that shit sandwich all day long because I wanna do what you're doing. And granted, when we get there, maybe things aren't always what we thought they were gonna be, but I think about the same thing, like on, having a YouTube channel, for example, and being able to share my ideas and my beliefs and my whatever, with people. It's like the shit sandwich that you have to eat are negative comments that are inevitable, where even when people think they're saying nice things, it's possible that there's just a little bit of not nice in there still. And so then, like, that's the shit sandwich is like, I love what I do and I will eat that shit sandwich because I want to keep doing what I'm doing. So if the sandwich stops you, then probably you're not doing the right thing. You're not like your heart's not really in it. But if you're willing to tolerate the obstacles in order to be able to do what it is that you want to be doing, then you know that you're on the right path. So it doesn't have to be easy. It can be hard, but it can be worth it. The challenge can be worth it. The price that you pay can be worth it. And that's really the balance that we want to find, not to just make life easy and avoid pain at all costs and all of that. Like I'm saying, like I think the birthplace of growth is pain. Like, and that's not to say no pain, no gain, or like whatever. Like, I don't think we need to like hurt ourselves on purpose, but life will bring us things naturally that suck and that aren't nice, they're not fair, they're not the way we want them to be. Um, they bring those things to us. And so when those things come, the other quote that she had right in the same spot is like, failure is a question from the universe of, do you want to keep going? It's just a check-in with yourself of like, when you fail, you now have the option. Is it worth it? Do you want to keep going? Because if you fail and you like want to throw in the towel, then it probably wasn't your calling anyway. But if you fail and you keep going and you fail and you keep going and you fail and you keep going and you fail and you keep going, like that is what I would call proof that you're living your soul's work, because not even failure can keep you from doing it. Not even a shit sandwich can keep you from doing it. You'll do it because it's worth it. And so that's one piece that I want to come back to as far as like a practical tip, um, that I think is another way that we can come to a peaceful place around like accepting what is and accepting the natural limitations that life offers. Like, we're physical. Sometimes we can't have every single important thing on our list like met. Um, and okay, so this is also very interesting. This is total tangent, sorry, but it just came to me and it made me feel better, so I'm gonna tell it to you too. Again, I think if you identify as having lived a painful life, which I do, I identify as like my life has been painful. I've had like painful things that I've lived through. I think that means that one of your top values in life is growth. Like, the more your soul values growth, the more painful your life will be. Because that's how, like, it's like Scorpio. Like, you light yourself on fire, you burn to ash, you are down on the ground as nothing, and then you rise from the ashes as the phoenix. And then you do it again. You light yourself on fire, the next painful thing, and then you emerge as the phoenix, and then you light yourself on fire. And it's just that cycle of evolution. So I think the more committed your soul was to growth, the more pain scoops get dealt onto your plate until you're really good at dealing with it, meaning it doesn't cause you suffering, meaning there's a sense of peace around the divine timing of it. It doesn't cause you to suffer. You can hurt and still not be in suffering. Um, Let me take a look at the chat and what you got in here. Ooh, thank you. Fola shared the deservability treatment. Bean bean. That's fun to say. I highly encourage you all to say bean bean with me. Oh, that makes me smile. Thank you so much. Oh, mm, yeah. When you're in a month-long funk, it is really hard to accept divine timing, but I know it's true. Yeah. Mm, yeah. I know. That's when we're in pain. That's the hardest time to say, "Yep, right on time. Yep, right on time." Mm. I think what I wanna say about that most is how might like, maybe do some brainstorming-ish, some ideation around how might that be right on time, if that's where you are right now. Um, Funks, first, I guess my question would be, and I mean, you can type it in the chat, I would love to hear, or in the comments or whatever, but more just for you to contemplate, like, what does it mean? Like, what does it feel like in your body to be in a funk? Um, and the reason I ask that is because I was thinking about this actually this morning with Pisces. Um, there are times, Pisces is a water sign, and just like the ocean with the pull of the moon, there are times where our waters are at high tide and there are times where our waters are at low tide. And when we're at high tide, we're full, probably full of love or energy or connection or like just full, just easier, I think, to rise above things and to see clearly, to like, yeah, high tide. And then with the cycle of the moon, the cycle of the transits, like we go from high tide back to low tide, and there is this sensation of being emptied out, of like being hollow inside, of being like something is missing. Again, like that low tide period where I'm picturing this dry beach where you can tell like sometimes water is there and sometimes it's not. It's like when there's low tide, you can see like what is the surface of the beach. You can explore like, and for the most part, I think most of us, I know this was used to be me, like most of us prefer high tide when all that surface of the beach is covered up by all this water and you can splash around in the water and like there's all this energy and stuff to do. And then we go back to low tide and we're just there on the beach with no distraction and only the gritty surface of the beach to keep us company. And like I don't know if this resonates at all, Andrea. I'm totally talking about my own personal process, but like I think part of what I'm getting at is like again the sensation of low tide, the sensation of being in a funk or having low energy. What if it wasn't bad? Like, what if it's just different? What if this is just a different way to feel? Sometimes I feel like this, and sometimes I feel like this. And no matter if you feel like this or you feel like this, you just observe. You just watch the way it moves inside of you. You just explore what shows up given the way you feel. And when the tide goes out and we're extra hollow, you can see more clearly what's in there. And that's the part where, it depends on what you find, if you like it in there or not. Even now, where I am in these moments where I do go into low tide, and I can tell you for me personally, and I wonder if anybody else resonates with this, when I have the personal planets go over my 12th house, um, like the sun, Mercury, Venus, like when those planets go over my 12th house, I get very low tide. it's like a funk that can last for a couple months at that point, where I don't feel like doing anything. I don't feel like being creative. I feel like my head is full of brain fog where I can't think, I can't interact, I don't want to process. I want to lay on my bed and watch repeat of True Blood on Hulu or whatever. Like that's my funk. And like still I go through these cycles like every year and even more than that, like month to month, like just feel different. Like sometimes high tide, sometimes low tide. And even now, the hollowed out feeling of low tide, it's not nearly as comfortable as of high tide. Like I notice there are lots of ways in my body where it feels uncomfortable. It feels uneasy, dis-ease. It just is like there should be something in there. It shouldn't be this empty. And it's like almost like disconcerting to like feel the tide go out and wonder like is it ever going to come back? Like I can't feel this way. I hate feeling this way. Like I just want to feel different. And like I feel like that low tide space is honestly the place where we get to practice unconditional love, because what we're doing in that space is trying to love ourselves even though we don't feel good. And practicing that, practicing loving things that are painful is like master level shit. Again, if you're thinking that sounds hard, that doesn't, I don't know how to do that. Like it's up there. It's very challenging as far as like being able to be hurting in the moment and find appreciation at the same time. And so one of the pieces that I want to leave you guys with is radical gratitude. And radical gratitude is the idea that like every little thing can have appreciation paid to it. So, for example, let's say on you're making a gratitude list regularly, which is amazing. Good job. Gratitude is one of the best ways to practice Pisces energy. That's why we're ending here. So maybe you're already doing this on the regular, and maybe you write on your gratitude list frequently, I am grateful for my breath. That's a really good one. That's a really good I'm grateful for my breath. I'm grateful for this breath right now, the inhale and the exhale. So, like, take that into a radical gratitude rampage of appreciation, is what Abraham Hicks calls it, to go deep into being grateful for your breath may sound like I'm grateful for the inhale and the exhale. I'm grateful for my lungs that hold this breath and naturally draw it in without me even thinking about it. I'm grateful for my heart that takes that oxygen into my bloodstream, and then my heart pumps it all over my body so that my entire body can receive the oxygen that I'm taking in right now. I am so grateful that the oxygen is here and I don't even ever have to think about where my very next breath is going to come from. It's just always right there for me. I am so grateful that I have the awareness to pay attention to my breath. I'm so grateful that I have the intention to spend these seconds spinning around all the different ways that my breath serves me. I'm so grateful that something so simple can be so profound in terms of making me feel grateful to be alive. So that was maybe what, like 30 seconds? Take it deeper, right? Like, I'm grateful for the food that I have to eat. I'm grateful for the rice and the beans and the tortillas and the hands that made each one of these. I'm grateful for the farmers who grew this food. I'm grateful for the machinery that they used to be able to harvest this food so that they could sell it at an even more affordable rate. I am so grateful for all of the transportation that had to happen, from getting this food off the farm to getting it to the manufacturer to getting it onto the store shelf where I bought it from. I'm so grateful for the people who run that store, all the people who show up to put all the groceries away so that when I go, it's right there where I know it's going to be. I'm so grateful for on and on and on and on. And spend your time there. Like even in pain, I'm grateful for my ability to feel the difference between things that feel like they hurt the inside of my system and things that feel pleasurable to the inside of my system. I'm so grateful for my ability to feel. I'm so grateful for my ability to notice that I don't feel as good right now as I normally do. I'm so grateful that I understand that emotions and energy are fluid. I'm so grateful that I know that this is going to change. This is just low tide and high tide's coming right around the corner. I'm so grateful for my ability to have patience with myself, where even when I don't feel as good as I wish I did, I can still accept that this is a moment where I'm alive and I have my breath. That I can accept that even though I don't understand why I have to be here right now, that this is exactly where I'm meant to be. That's one piece of, so practicing our radical gratitude, that's one piece of Pisces, where Pisces, the top end of Pisces, the highest frequency, represents basically total dissolution of our ego. And our ego is the part of us that says, I want, or I need, or I have to have it this way. Like, the ego is the one that says, I need to feel good all the time. Like when we suspend our ego, when we dissolve our ego back into the interconnectedness of all things, we know that there are highs and there are lows. And we are always exactly where we're meant to be at the time we're meant to be there. And that it's the ego that needs to understand why it's happening in real time. Our soul doesn't need to understand. Our soul already trusts that this is exactly where I'm meant to be. Do I understand why I'm here? No. Do I need to know? No. I know I'm right on time in my misery, in my total disgust with what I'm seeing on the TV, in whatever it is, I'm right on time. Do I have to understand it? Is it true that you have to understand it to be able to find acceptance of it? I would say no. I would say no, that's not true, but that's something each of us have to come to. As far as, like, I think if we have to understand it, that's what keeps us in suffering. It's like we want to say, like, tell me why and then I'll feel better. And it's like, if you could like set yourself free into feeling better, you wouldn't need to know why. Like, you wouldn't need to understand why. The 15 years that I spent in depression, like, while it was happening, I didn't understand. I felt forsaken. And now I get it. Now I talk to people almost every day who are suffering, and I give them whatever comes to me to give them. Sometimes I just listen. Sometimes there's nothing to say. Sometimes I just listen and I nod and I show compassion for the pain that they're in. We're always in the right spot. We're always in the right time. I will leave you with this. When you see how beautiful the world already is, you download visions, one by one, of how you can personally contribute to making it even better. We're not here to fix anything, but we are here to add our own unique swipe of beauty to the world. And I think when we can find the beauty in whatever we're looking at, I mean, which is another way to say unconditional love, like, we can find something to appreciate in everything, which is why practicing radical gratitude is so effective. When we can do that, that is transcendence. That is the practical recipe of how to transcend, is to not need it to be any certain way. No matter what it is, I can find love. That is transcendent, transcending our complaint with the way it is, letting go of needing to be able to be the one who gets to say how it needs to be. Like, I think in that piece, I keep saying I'm going to leave you with this. In that piece, I do want to add one piece about, like, if we are in ego and we are insisting that we have it a certain way, that does not make you bad. That even the insisting that you have it a certain way can be divine timing. Like, you can even be spared by thinking that you know how it's supposed to be, and so you behave in a certain way, and it spares you from something even worse. So it does not have to look a certain way. And if anything, Pisces is encouraging us to let it look however it does. Let it be whatever it is. In the next live stream, I'm going to talk, well, the next live stream will be the Virgo full moon. So we'll pull in Virgo quite a bit more next time and talk through this Pisces Virgo axis of how do they work together? How do they help each other? How do they like tear each other down and like bring each other to their knees and into their shadows? And I think that'll pull a lot more together. But in the meantime, practice our radical gratitude, let go of needing to have it be a certain way, and practice loving what is. I mean, there's books out there from multiple teachers that are even titled "Love What Is." So maybe that's a good way to go this upcoming Pisces season. I think I think there is, well, it's yes. Let me go back and actually do a leave you with this one this time. When you see how beautiful the world already is, you download visions one by one of how you can personally contribute to make it even better. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your energy on this channel. I love getting to read your comments and how you guys share your stories with me and with everybody else who reads those comments. Thank you for being here. It is one of my many blessings in this life that I will be counting this upcoming Pisces season. Until next time, you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I.